The emergency alarm screamed through the corridors of Station Nexus, its red light casting bloody shadows on the metal walls. Ambassador H of the Federation pressed her forearms against the conference table, her blue skin pale with fear. Around her sat the representatives of 12 different species, all wearing the same expression of terror. "The Devourers have broken through the outer rim," announced General A, his reptilian features twisted in despair. 3 entire star systems, gone, consumed, nothing left but empty space. The holographic display in the center of the table showed the horrifying truth. Red markers indicated the advance of the Devourers, a mechanical race that had appeared from the galactic void 6 months ago. They consumed everything in their path planets, stars, even the space stations that tried to flee. No communication had ever been established. They simply arrived, consumed, and moved on. "How long do we have?" whispered Doctor, the elderly scientist whose people had been among the first to encounter the threat. "At their current rate of expansion," A's voice cracked, "they'll reach the core worlds in 47 standard days." Silence fell over the room like a funeral shroud. 47 days until the end of galactic civilization. The combined fleets of all their species had thrown everything they had at the Devourers. Energy weapons, kinetic bombardments, quantum torpedoes, even experimental phase weapons that could destroy matter at the atomic level. Nothing worked. The Devourers seemed to absorb the energy from the attacks, growing stronger with each failed assault. Ambassador H looked around the table at faces filled with despair. The Federation, masters of energy manipulation, the collective, unmatched in scientific research. The Reptilian Empire feared warriors throughout the galaxy. The Hive Queens with their billions of worker drones, all of them helpless against this threat. "There must be something," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Some weapon we haven't tried, some tactic we haven't considered." "We've exhausted every possibility," replied Queen High, her mandibles clicking nervously. "My scientists have run over 10,000 simulations. Every scenario ends the same way." Doctor suddenly straightened in his chair, his large eyes widening. "Wait," he said slowly. "Not every possibility. There is one option we haven't discussed." All eyes turned to the ancient scientist. He had lived for over 3 centuries and possessed knowledge that spanned the entire galaxy's recorded history. "The Forbidden Sector," he continued, his voice heavy with meaning. "Grid coordinates 447.9 Delta Sigma." A collective shudder ran through the room. Even the bravest warriors knew stories of the Forbidden Sector. It was a region of space that every civilized species agreed to avoid. Ships that entered that area never returned. Long-range sensors detected nothing but empty systems, but something was there. Something that made even the most hardened space captains change course. "You can't be serious," growled General A. "The Forbidden Sector is called Forbidden for a reason. The Galactic Council banned all travel there after the incident." "What happened during the incident has been classified for over 500 years, Doctor replied. "But I have access to the archives. I know what's in that sector." The room fell silent again. Ambassador H felt her hearts racing in her chest. Whatever Doctor knew, it was clearly something that terrified him. "A species lives there," the old scientist continued. "They call themselves humans." The word sent chills through the assembled delegates. Most had heard whispers, fragments of stories passed down through generations. Tales of a species so violent, so unpredictable, that the Galactic Council had voted unanimously to quarantine them in their home sector. "The records are incomplete," Doctor said, activating his personal data pad. "But what we do know is disturbing. They are a young species, barely 10,000 years of recorded civilization. Yet in that short time, they have engaged in more conflicts than most species experience in 1,000,000 years." The holographic display changed, showing fragmentary data from ancient first contact protocols. Images of bipedal creatures with varied skin tones, hair colors that ranged across the spectrum, and most unsettling of all, forward-facing predator eyes. "They fight among themselves constantly," Doctor continued. "Wars over territory, resources, ideologies, even the color of their skin. Their entire history is written in blood. They've developed weapons capable of destroying their own planet dozens of times over." "Then why are they still alive?" asked Ambassador H. "That's what makes them truly terrifying," replied the scientist. "They survive because they're too stubborn to die. Their physiology is remarkable. They can adapt to almost any environment. They've been found living in frozen wastelands, burning deserts, underwater cities, even in the vacuum of space with minimal protection. General slammed his fist on the table. This is madness. You're suggesting we contact a species so dangerous that our ancestors locked them away? We don't even know if they're still alive in there. They're alive, Doctor said quietly. Our border sensors detect activity, ships moving between systems, energy signatures from their worlds. They're not only alive, they're thriving. Queen Hai leaned forward, her compound eyes reflecting the red emergency lights. Even if we could contact them, what makes you think they would help us? A species of warriors might see the Devourers as simply another enemy to conquer. Or, Doctor said slowly, they might be the only species crazy enough to find a way to win. The implications hung in the air like poison gas. Contact with the humans would require violating the most sacred law in galactic civilization. The quarantine protocol had been established for good reasons. The fragments of historical data painted a picture of a species that was creative, innovative, and absolutely ruthless when threatened. What exactly are you proposing? Ambassador H asked. Doctor stood slowly, his aged frame trembling slightly. I'm proposing we do what our ancestors were too afraid to do. We make contact with humanity. We ask for their help. And if they refuse, then we die with a clear conscience, knowing we tried everything. The old scientist's voice grew stronger. But if they accept, if they're willing to fight the Devourers, we might have a chance. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Representatives argued, pleaded, and shouted. Some called the plan suicide. Others called it the only hope they had left. Through it all, the red emergency lights continued to flash, reminding them that time was running out. Finally, Ambassador H called for a vote. One by one, the species' representatives made their choice. The Federation voted yes, seeing no other option. The collective agreed, driven by scientific curiosity about these mysterious humans. The Reptilian Empire voted yes after General reluctantly admitted that warriors respected strength, regardless of its source. When the final tally was counted, the vote was unanimous. They would violate the quarantine protocol. They would make contact with humanity. Who will carry the message? Asked Queen Hai. I will, Ambassador H said without hesitation. This was my idea to support. I'll take responsibility for the consequences. Doctor activated his data pad again. I'm transferring all available information about human contact protocols to your ship's computer. It's not much. Most records were deliberately destroyed after the quarantine was established, but there are some clues about their communication methods. As the meeting dispersed, Ambassador H felt the weight of galactic civilization resting on her shoulders. She would pilot her fastest ship to the edge of the Forbidden Sector and attempt something that hadn't been done in 5 centuries, make peaceful contact with humanity. Her ship, was a diplomatic vessel equipped with the most advanced communication arrays in the galaxy. As she prepared for departure, her crew of volunteers checked and rechecked every system. They all knew this might be a one-way journey. Ambassador, her communications officer said nervously, I've loaded Doctor's files into our linguistic computers. If the humans still speak the same languages, we should be able to establish basic communication. And if they don't, then we hope they're curious enough not to shoot us on sight. The launched from Station Nexus 12 hours later, carrying with it the desperate hopes of a dozen species. As they traveled toward the Forbidden Sector, Ambassador H studied everything known about humans. The fragments painted a picture of incredible diversity, not just in appearance, but in culture, beliefs, and capabilities. Humans apparently organized themselves into hundreds of different groups called nations that competed for resources and territory. Yet somehow, they also cooperated when faced with external threats. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only 3 centuries after developing nuclear weapons. Most species took to make that leap. Their art, what little had been preserved, showed an obsession with both beauty and violence. They created music that could move listeners to tears, then wrote songs about war and death. Their literature explored themes of love, sacrifice, and redemption alongside graphic depictions of conflict and suffering. They're contradictory, Ambassador H murmured as she read another file. Everything about them contradicts everything else. Perhaps that's what makes them dangerous, her science officer replied. Predictable enemies can be defeated, unpredictable ones. The journey to the Forbidden Sector took 6 days. As they approached the boundary, the crew grew increasingly nervous. Ancient warning beacons, some over 1,000 years old, transmitted automated messages in dozens of languages. Quarantine zone authorized personnel only extreme danger. Sensor sweep, Ambassador H ordered as they crossed the boundary. Nothing on long range, the tactical officer reported. Wait, I'm detecting multiple contacts, ships, lots of them, there. Ambassador, they're surrounding us. On the main screen, vessels appeared as if materializing from empty space. They were unlike anything in the Galactic database's angular, aggressive-looking craft that seemed designed for war. No elegant curves or artistic flourishes like civilized ships. These were tools built for one purpose: fighting. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced, his voice tight with fear. Put it through. The screen flickered, then displayed the face of a human. Ambassador H had seen images, but encountering one in real time was startling. The creature had pale skin, short brown hair, and those unsettling forward-facing eyes that marked it as a natural predator. Most disturbing of all, it was smiling, showing white teeth that seemed designed for tearing flesh. Well, well, the human said in accented galactic standard. It's been a long time since someone was foolish enough to visit us. I'm Captain Sarah of the Terran Defense Force. State your business or prepare to be destroyed. Ambassador H stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over despite her fear. Captain, I am Ambassador H of the Federation. I come representing the Galactic Council with a request for assistance. The human's smile widened, showing more of those predatory teeth. The Galactic Council, the same organization that locked us in here like rabid animals. How interesting. What could possibly be so desperate that you'd risk violating your precious quarantine protocol? The galaxy is under attack by a force called the Devourers. They consume everything in their path. Our combined fleets have been powerless to stop them. In 40 days, they will reach the core worlds. Captain's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those alien eyes. And you think we can help where your superior civilizations have failed? We hope so, Ambassador H replied honestly. We've exhausted every other option. The human was silent for several long moments, studying her with those predator eyes. Finally, the captain spoke again. Follow my ships to Earth. Don't deviate from the designated course, don't scan anything you're not supposed to, and don't make any sudden movements. My people have gotten very good at destroying things over the past 5 centuries. As they followed the human ships deeper into their territory, Ambassador H wondered if she had just saved the galaxy or doomed it to an even worse fate. The humans were their last hope, but sometimes the cure was worse than the disease. The journey to Earth would take 2 days. 2 days to convince a species of warriors to fight for civilizations that had imprisoned them. 2 days to forge an alliance with the galaxy's most dangerous species. Behind them, the Devourers continued their relentless advance, consuming star systems and growing stronger. Ahead lay Earth and humanity, the galaxy's last desperate hope. The real question was whether humanity would choose to save their former captors, or watch the galaxy burn while they remained safely quarantined in their forbidden sector. Ambassador H prayed to her gods that humans possessed at least a small measure of mercy beneath their legendary capacity for violence. The fate of trillions of beings now rested in the hands of Earth's children, the species too dangerous for civilized space. Earth hung before them like a blue and green jewel against the black of space. But Ambassador H could see immediately that this was not the primitive world the archives had described. Massive orbital stations ringed the planet, their design brutal and efficient. Ships moved between them in organized patterns that spoke of military discipline and purpose. My God, whispered her science officer, the energy readings from those stations, some of them are larger than our cities. Captain's voice crackled through the communication system. Welcome to Earth, Ambassador. Try not to look too surprised. We've had 500 years to keep ourselves busy. The escort ships guided them to one of the smaller orbital platforms. As they docked, Ambassador H could see human workers moving about in environmental suits that looked far more advanced than anything in the galactic databases. Their movements were quick, efficient, and somehow predatory even in the simple act of maintenance work. The docking tube is pressurized and ready, Captain announced. A delegation is waiting to meet you. Fair warning, they're not diplomats. We don't really do diplomacy anymore. Ambassador H and her small team passed through the airlock into the human station. The corridor beyond was stark and functional, lit by harsh white lights that made everything look sharp-edged and dangerous. Humans stood waiting for them, and seeing them in person was even more unsettling than the video communication had been. They were smaller than most galactic species, but there was something in the way they carried themselves that radiated threat. Their eyes tracked every movement with the focus of natural hunters. Even their casual stance suggested they were ready for violence at any moment. "I'm Admiral Tors," said the lead human, a female with graying hair and scars across her face that spoke of old battles. "I command Earth's defense forces. Captain tells me you have an interesting story about something eating the galaxy." "Admiral Tors," Ambassador H began, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us. The situation is indeed grave." "Follow me," the Admiral said curtly. "We'll talk in the briefing room." As they walked through the station, Ambassador H was struck by the efficiency of human design. Everything served a purpose. There were no decorative elements, no artistic flourishes that other species used to express their culture. This was a space built for war. The briefing room contained a large holographic projector and seats designed for human physiology. Admiral Tors gestured for the delegation to sit, while human technicians activated the display system. "Show me these devourers," Tors said without preamble. Ambassador H activated her data pad, transmitting the accumulated intelligence to the human systems. The hologram flickered to life, showing the mechanical ships and the devastation they left behind. 47 star systems consumed," she began. "No communication attempt successful. They appear to be machines, but unlike any artificial intelligence we've encountered. They don't just destroy, they literally consume matter and energy, converting it into more of themselves." Admiral Tors studied the display with those unsettling human eyes. "What weapons have you tried?" "Everything," Ambassador H replied. "Plasma bombardment, quantum torpedoes, antimatter charges, gravity wells, even experimental dimensional weapons. The Devourers seem to absorb the energy from our attacks." Tors grunted. "What about kinetic weapons, mass drivers?" "Kinetic weapons?" Ambassador H looked confused. "Those are primitive technologies. Hurling chunks of metal at targets is inefficient compared to energy weapons." Several humans in the room exchanged glances, and Ambassador H was disturbed to see what looked like predatory grins spreading across their faces. "Admiral," one of the human technicians said, "this is fascinating. Their energy absorption capability suggests they're designed to counter advanced civilizations, but if they've never encountered kinetic warfare, they might not have defenses against it," Tors finished. "Interesting. What else can you tell me about their movement patterns?" Over the next hour, Ambassador H shared everything the Galactic Council knew about the Devourers. The humans asked detailed questions about their ship designs, their consumption process, and their apparent reproduction methods. What struck her was how quickly they grasped the tactical implications of each piece of information. "You're treating this like a military problem," she observed. "Because it is," Admiral Tors replied. "Your Galactic Council has been thinking like civilized beings, trying to communicate, negotiate, find peaceful solutions. These Devourers aren't interested in peace. They're a weapon." "A weapon?" "Someone or something created these machines and pointed them at the galaxy. The question is why, and whether they're still controlling them." Tors stood and began packing, a distinctly predatory movement. "But that's a secondary concern. The immediate problem is how to kill them." The casual way she spoke about killing disturbed Ambassador H, but she couldn't deny the logic. Every attempt at communication with the Devourers had failed. They showed no sign of intelligence beyond their mechanical purpose. "Can you help us?" she asked directly. Admiral Tors stopped packing and fixed her with that predator stare. "That depends. What exactly are you offering in exchange for our help?" "What do you mean?" "Your species locked us in this sector for 5 centuries, Tors said, her voice carrying an edge of old anger. "You declared us too dangerous for civilized space. Now that you need our help, what makes you think we owe you anything?" Ambassador H felt her blood chill. She had hoped human curiosity or altruism might motivate them, but these were clearly not the same humans who had been quarantined. 500 years of isolation had changed them. The Devourers will reach this sector eventually, she said carefully. If they consume the galaxy, you'll be trapped here with nowhere to go. Maybe, Tors acknowledged. Or maybe we'll find a way to deal with them when the time comes. We've gotten very good at survival. The room fell silent. Ambassador H realized she had badly miscalculated. These humans weren't desperate refugees grateful for contact with the outside galaxy. They were a military power that had spent centuries preparing for war. "What do you want?" she asked finally. Tors smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Freedom, full citizenship in galactic society, recognition of human territorial claims, and most importantly, assurance that when this is over, there will be no new attempts to quarantine us." "I don't have authority to make those agreements." "Then get someone who does," Tors said. "Because here's the situation, Ambassador. We can probably save your galaxy. We've spent 500 years preparing for wars that the rest of you can't imagine. But we're not doing it for free, and we're not doing it as hired mercenaries. We do it as equals or not at all." Ambassador H felt the weight of impossible decisions crushing down on her. The Galactic Council would never agree to full human citizenship without extensive debate and study. But there was no time for lengthy negotiations. "How can I convince my government that humanity deserves such trust?" she asked. "Let me show you something," Tors said. She activated her personal communicator. "Control, patch us through to the—" The holographic display changed, showing the interior of what was clearly a military vessel. A human male in uniform appeared on screen. "Admiral Tors," he said with crisp military precision. "Reporting ready for demonstration as ordered." "Proceed with Exercise Prometheus, Captain Williams." "Acknowledged. Exercise Prometheus is go." The display switched to an external view of human space. Ambassador H watched in amazement as hundreds of ships emerged from what appeared to be empty space. They had been hidden somehow, invisible to her ship's sensors. "Stealth technology," Tors explained casually. "One of our little innovations during the quarantine years." The human fleet moved with mechanical precision toward what appeared to be an asteroid. Ambassador H's science officer whispered urgently in her ear about the energy readings they were detecting. "Admiral," she said slowly, "that asteroid, those are the same energy signatures as Devourer technology." Tors nodded. 3 months ago, a Devourer scout probe penetrated the outer edge of our sector. We captured it intact." "Captured intact?" Ambassador H couldn't hide her shock. "That's impossible. No one has ever successfully engaged a Devourer unit without it self-destructing." "No one else has tried kinetic capture nets fired from stealth platforms," Tors replied. "Watch and learn." On the display, the human fleet opened fire. But instead of energy beams, they launched physical projectiles at incredible velocity. Solid chunks of metal moving at significant fractions of light speed slammed into the captured Devourer construct. The machine tried to absorb the kinetic energy, but the sheer mass and velocity overwhelmed its systems. Chunks of metal punched through its hull, creating devastating internal damage. Within minutes, the construct was reduced to floating debris. "Simple physics," Tors explained. "Energy can be redirected, absorbed, or dissipated, but momentum is conserved. A 10-kilogram tungsten rod moving at 30% of light speed carries more destructive force than most of your energy weapons, and there's no way to absorb that impact." Ambassador H stared at the debris field in stunned silence. The humans had not only captured a Devourer intact, they had found a way to destroy it using technology that most galactic species considered obsolete. "How many ships do you have?" she asked quietly. "Enough," Tors replied. "We've spent 5 centuries preparing for the day when someone would try to destroy us. We built weapons, ships, and strategies that no civilized species would ever consider. We studied war like your species study art. And you're willing to use these weapons against the Devourers." "For the right price," Tors leaned forward. "Full galactic citizenship, no more quarantine, no more treating us like dangerous animals. We want our place among the stars, Ambassador." Ambassador H felt torn between hope and terror. The humans clearly had the ability to fight the Devourers, but they were demanding fundamental changes to galactic civilization. Changes that would take years of debate and negotiation to approve. "I need to contact the Galactic Council," she said. "Of course." But while you're making your calls, consider this. Tor stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the human fleet still visible in the distance. Every day you delay is another day the devourers get closer to the core worlds. How many species will be consumed while your politicians debate our citizenship status? The Admiral turned back to face her, and Ambassador H saw something in those predator eyes that chilled her to the bone. It wasn't malice or hatred. It was patience. The patience of a hunter who knew their prey was trapped. You have 41 days until the devourers reach the core worlds, Tor said calmly. We can mobilize our fleet in 72 hours, but we won't lift a finger until we have a signed treaty guaranteeing our full recognition as a galactic species. And if the Council refuses? Tor shrugged. Then you die and we face the devourers alone when they eventually reach us. Either way, humanity survives. The question is whether anyone else does. Ambassador H realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that was willing to let entire civilizations fall rather than compromise their demands. The humans weren't offering to help out of altruism or even mutual survival. They were using the crisis as leverage to achieve their political goals. It was ruthless, calculating, and absolutely terrifying. It was also probably the galaxy's only hope for survival. I'll transmit your terms to the Council immediately, she said. Excellent, Tor smiled that predatory smile again. While you're doing that, would you like to see more of what we've built during our exile? Captain can give you a tour of our military facilities. As Ambassador H was led deeper into human space, she began to understand the true scope of what 5 centuries of isolation had created. This wasn't just a quarantined species. This was a military power that had been forged in the crucible of enforced solitude. The humans had spent 500 years preparing for war. Now they were ready to unleash that preparation on an unsuspecting galaxy. The only question was whether they would use it to save civilized space, or to conquer it. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 18 hours after Ambassador H's transmission reached the core worlds. Representatives from every major species gathered in the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime, their faces reflecting various degrees of shock, outrage, and desperate hope. The humans want full galactic citizenship, Ambassador H repeated for the 3rd time. Complete recognition of their territorial claims, permanent seats on the Council, and absolute assurance that there will be no future attempts at quarantine. Senator Ayler of the Republic slammed his fist against his podium. This is extortion. They're holding the entire galaxy hostage for their political demands. Yes, Ambassador H agreed calmly, and it's working. She activated the holographic display, showing the footage Admiral Tors had provided of human military capabilities. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as human kinetic weapons reduced devourer constructs to scrap metal in seconds. Their technology is crude but effective, she continued. While we developed elegant energy weapons, they perfected the art of hurling metal at extreme velocity. The devourers have no defense against momentum-based attacks. Doctor leaned forward in his chair. What did you observe of their overall capabilities? Extensive. Ambassador H brought up detailed sensor readings from her visit to human space. They have at least 12,000 military vessels that we could detect, though their stealth technology suggests there are many more we couldn't see. Their infrastructure is entirely militarized. Every human facility serves some aspect of their war machine. The readings showed massive orbital shipyards, asteroid mining operations that fed resources directly to weapons manufacturing, and training facilities that processed human populations through military service. It was the infrastructure of a species that had spent centuries preparing for total war. How is this possible? Demanded General. Our intelligence suggested they were barely spacefaring when the quarantine began. They adapted, Ambassador H replied. 500 years of forced isolation taught them that the galaxy was hostile, so they prepared for hostility. Every human citizen receives military training. Every human world contributes to their defense network. They've turned their entire species into a weapon. Senator Ayler's scales shifted to an angry red. And now they want to point that weapon at us if we don't give them everything they demand. Actually, no, Ambassador H corrected. They made it clear they'll simply let us die if we refuse. They don't need to conquer the galaxy, they just need to wait for the devourers to finish the job. The implications sent a chill through the chamber. The humans had calculated that they could survive whatever was coming, with or without the rest of galactic civilization. Their demands weren't desperate bargaining, they were a business transaction. "We cannot make this decision lightly," announced Supreme Counselor, the ancient leader whose species had founded the Council 3 ago. "Human citizenship would grant them access to all our technologies, our trade networks, our colonial territories. It would also give us access to their military technology," Doctor pointed out. "Their kinetic weapons could revolutionize our defensive capabilities. Or they could use them to enforce their will across the galaxy," General growled. "We'd be trading the Devourer threat for human domination." Ambassador H stood and activated another section of her report. "There's something else you need to consider. I spent 3 days observing human society during the negotiations. They're not the chaotic savages our ancestors described." The display showed footage from human civilian areas, cities with millions of inhabitants living in apparent harmony. Humans of different skin colors, cultures, and beliefs working together on massive engineering projects. Children playing in parks while their parents discussed philosophy and art. "They've unified their species," she continued. "All their old tribal conflicts ended centuries ago when they realized they faced external threats. They've created a single human government, a shared culture, and a common purpose." "Conquest," Senator Ayler spat. "Survival," Ambassador H corrected. "Everything they do is focused on ensuring humanity continues to exist. They're not interested in ruling other species. They just want guarantees that no one will ever try to cage them again." The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued that human demands were reasonable given their demonstrated capabilities. Others insisted that yielding to extortion would set a dangerous precedent. All of them were aware that every hour of debate brought the Devourers closer to the core worlds. Finally, Supreme Counselor called for order. "We will vote," he announced. "All in favor of accepting human terms and granting full galactic citizenship." The vote was closer than Ambassador H had expected. Several species voted against on principle, preferring to face the Devourers rather than reward human extortion. But survival instincts ultimately prevailed. The motion passed by a narrow margin. "The terms are accepted," announced. "Ambassador H, you will return to human space with our signed agreement. May the gods help us all." The journey back to Earth took another 6 days. During the trip, Ambassador H received regular updates on Devourer movements. They had consumed 3 more star systems and were accelerating their advance. Time was running out. Admiral Torres was waiting when they docked at the orbital platform. "Well," she asked without preamble. "The Council has agreed to your terms," Ambassador H said, handing over the signed treaty. "Humanity is now recognized as a full member of galactic civilization." Torres read through the document with the careful attention of someone who understood that words had power. "Excellent. We'll begin fleet mobilization immediately." "How long until you can engage the Devourers?" "We've been preparing for immediate deployment since you left," Torres replied. "The first human expeditionary force will depart in 6 hours. Admiral will command the operation." Ambassador H felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Will you be accompanying the fleet?" "No, Admiral is our best tactical commander for this type of operation. I'll remain here to coordinate our overall defense in case this doesn't go as planned." Torres paused, studying the alien diplomat. "You're worried we'll fail." "I'm worried about what happens if you succeed," Ambassador H admitted. Torres laughed, a sound that was somehow both amused and threatening. "You're afraid we'll decide we like conquering things and turn our weapons on the rest of the galaxy." "The thought had occurred to me." "Fair enough," Torres acknowledged. "Let me ease your concerns. Conquest is expensive, time-consuming, and ultimately pointless. We don't want to rule other species, we want them to leave us alone. The best way to ensure that is to prove we're too dangerous to threaten. And if some species don't learn that lesson," Torres smiled her predatory smile, "then they'll learn it the hard way." 6 hours later, Ambassador H stood in the observation deck of the human orbital station, watching the first human expeditionary force prepare for departure. It was unlike any fleet she had ever seen. The ships were angular and aggressive, designed purely for war. No elegant curves or artistic elements, just weapons platforms built to deliver maximum destruction. Impressive, isn't it? Captain joined her at the viewport. 1,200 vessels, each one carrying enough kinetic firepower to level a planet. How many crew members? That's the beauty of our design philosophy, replied. Most of our ships are heavily automated. The average crew is only 50 humans, and many of our fighters are completely unmanned. We've learned to fight smart instead of just throwing bodies at the problem. The fleet began its departure in perfect formation. Hundreds of ships moving as one, their dark hulls reflecting the light of Earth's sun. It was a sight both beautiful and terrifying. Admiral is transmitting a message to the fleet, announced. The communication screens throughout the station activated, showing a human male in military uniform standing on the bridge of what was obviously the fleet flagship. His face bore the scars and weathered look of a veteran warrior. Soldiers of the Terran Defense Force, his voice carried clearly through the speakers. For 5 centuries, the galaxy has treated humanity as a threat to be contained. Today, we prove them right. But we prove them right in defense of life, liberty, and the right of all species to exist free from extinction. The human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving only empty space where hundreds of vessels had been moments before. Ambassador H felt a chill as she realized the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity was no longer contained, and they were armed with weapons that could reshape the balance of power among the stars. When will we know if they've succeeded? She asked. Admiral will send regular updates, Captain replied. But the real test will be when they engage the main Devourer fleet. Our analysis suggests that will happen in about 72 hours. 3 days to determine whether humanity would save the galaxy or die trying. 3 days to learn if the most dangerous species in known space could defeat an enemy that had consumed entire star systems. Ambassador H spent those days studying everything she could about human military doctrine. What she learned disturbed her even more than their weapons technology. Humans didn't just fight wars, they studied them with academic precision. They had analyzed every conflict in galactic history, identified patterns and weaknesses, and developed tactics specifically designed to exploit them. They had spent 5 centuries preparing not just to defend themselves, but to wage war against any conceivable enemy. The Devourers were just the first test of their preparations. Incoming transmission from Admiral, Captain announced on the second day. The communication screen activated, showing the Admiral's face against a backdrop of stars. We've made contact with the Devourer Advance Force, he reported. Engagement will commence in 2 hours. Initial probe attacks confirmed their vulnerability to kinetic weapons, proceeding with full assault. Any casualties? Torres asked. Minimal. We lost 3 unmanned scouts to their energy weapons, but their targeting systems can't track our stealth fighters effectively. The enemy appears to have no experience fighting an opponent who refuses to use energy-based attacks. The transmission ended, leaving Ambassador H to contemplate the implications. The Devourers had evolved to fight advanced civilizations that relied on energy weapons and sophisticated technologies. But humans had deliberately chosen primitive, effective weapons that the enemy couldn't counter. It was typically human finding the one approach that no sane species would consider, then perfecting it until it became devastatingly effective. The final battle reports arrived 18 hours later. Admiral appeared on screen again, but this time he was smiling with satisfaction. Mission accomplished, he announced. The Devourer Advance Force has been completely destroyed. We're transmitting tactical data and debris samples for analysis. Recommend immediate deployment of additional human forces to intercept the main Devourer fleet. Ambassador H felt her legs give out as the magnitude of the news hit her. Humanity had done what the combined forces of galactic civilization could not accomplish. They had defeated the Devourers. How, she whispered. Admiral Torres, who had been monitoring the communications, turned to face her with that predatory grin. Simple. While your civilization spent learning how to build, we spent centuries learning how to destroy. The Devourers were designed to fight builders. They had no defense against destroyers. The galaxy was safe, but Ambassador H couldn't shake the feeling that they had simply traded one existential threat for another. Humanity was no longer contained, and they had just proven they were the most effective military force in known space. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human expansion was about to begin.